Michelle, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I am great. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk to you. We talked a little bit about what you do off or before we hit record, and I'm super excited to really dive into that conversation. But before we do that, who are you?
I am a pediatrician and a run coach. I am the founder of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals like ourselves.
Awesome. I love that combination because it's normally not one we hear all the time. So it's awesome.
And I coach adults. I mean, I know I'm a pediatrician, but I primarily coach adults in the running world. And I live in Philadelphia.
Because it's not a normal combination that we see, how did you become a coach? Like, what was that decision like or process like?
Well, I think the first part of the story is that I was not always a runner. So a lot of people hear that I'm a running coach and think that I've been a runner all my life. And the truth is that I got into running in my probably late 20s, early 30s. I was really not an athlete at all growing up. And, I was the kid who struggled to run the mile with those physical fitness tests they made us do and huffing and puffing my way around and finishing last. And looking at the track and cross country team thinking like, I do not know what they are made of, but I am not one of those people. And I never thought that I would be. And so I came to running after my residency. I started a new job, moved to a new place. I was newly married, like all of these stressors all at once. And I found myself in this place. Like one night I was at my job, I was working the night shift and I was counseling a patient and a family about like healthy eating and getting good exercise and all of these things for healthy living. And I just had this moment like, I'm talking the talk, but I'm not walking the walk, and I'm not doing any of these things that I am sharing with this family. And so I feel like at that point, I kind of tapped back into my why. And I thought, you know what, I am going to try running again. Like I had tried a lot of times and quit a lot of times. And I decided I was going to lace on my sneakers and give it a go. And that is what stuck. Like from then on, at that period in my life, like I started 5-10 minutes jogging around my block. And I loved how everything kind of cleared, my mind cleared, all of the stresses that were going on kind of melted away. And I think that's what kept me going back for more. So that was almost 10 years ago. And then I became a coach. Let's see, that was I think the marathon did it. I think running my first marathon. I started working with a running coach about maybe 6 years ago. And at that point, like I had been a regular runner and I had done a couple of half marathons. I was very consistent with it, but I found I wasn't really getting better. And so I reached out to a coach and I had all of these hangups about that, like, oh, I'm a really slow runner. What is a coach going to do for me? I'm not an elite athlete. Like I thought only elite athletes needed a coach. But after I started working with him, I made so much progress in such a short time, and running became easier. I got faster. I ran this marathon, and then after that, I feel like I was like a running evangelist. Like we all must go and run a marathon. It will change your life. Yeah, and then I became a coach. So I was very inspired by my own coach and just the sport itself.
That's awesome. And I love hearing your story on that because I think a lot of people can relate to that because so many runners who, want to do a marathon, half marathon, just kind of on their own or, whatever, just to do it, not for a time or anything. Just do find those online training plans and just follow that. And I think there's a lot of benefit for everyone, regardless if you're a slow runner, fast runner, have time goals, have a goal just to finish. I think there's so much value to having a coach to help you through that process.
Yeah, I would agree. I used a lot of stock, training plans when I started out. And the thing for me that was always tough, I was doing shift work, and I didn't have set schedule. So my schedule was different every week. And so to have a plan that was like, you must run this amount of time on Monday and this amount on Saturday, and the long run always has to be on the weekend. And I just didn't know enough about it at the time to be able to switch that around on my own and figure out how to do that. And so when I started working with my coach, and he was like, well, I can, write you a plan that kind of fits with your life here, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a certain way. And, we can do different things and some speed work and all these things. But we kind of work with our level of fitness, whatever that is. So a lot of people, when they train for a marathon, they have it in their head that they must do a 20-mile long run. And that's not the case, but I didn't know that when I started out.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard too, because, the first marathon I did, I trained for it when I was in college. And so other than going to classes and working a few days a week, it's like I kind of had a fair amount of time on my schedule so I could follow the training plan like to a T. And then when I ran one later on, once I was working, it's like, oh, I can't follow this to a T. We need to tweak this a little bit and change things. And I think it's something a lot of people don't fully recognize when they're trying to do it on their own, is that like, yes, this is a training plan, but it also has to work with what works with you in your life too.
Yeah. You don't want to be like a slave to the training plan in a way. And a lot of people will feel like they'll see the plan online and they'll just say, well, there's no way I could do this. Like the volume is too much, the time is too much. And so they just give up before they even get started. And that always makes me a little bit sad too, because we can write something that fits with your life. I mean, if you want to run a marathon and only run one day a week, like we have to talk, but, but within reason, there's ways to structure it so that it can fit, even if you're very, very busy, don't have a lot of time, if you're a slower runner, all those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 1 day a week training plan is not ideal, but
Right.
the 4 day a week training plan can work.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk. I want to dive in because a big part of what you do is teaching people to listen to their body, train based on how they're feeling. Going back to you and when you were training or were doing shift work, you were probably tired at times. What sort of things were you having to do to modify your schedule, change your training based on what you were feeling?
I think one of the big things was recognizing fatigue, and not just fatigue like, oh, I need to sleep more, or maybe I shouldn't go for a run after a night shift, but also muscle fatigue and soreness here and there. So with the first marathon, I feel like this probably won't surprise anyone. Like I'm a bit of a perfectionist, very type A, like that most physicians probably are. And so I have this training plan, in a spreadsheet, and I feel like I must follow it to the T or I will not be able to run this marathon. And so I would really beat myself up if I couldn't, like if I was feeling tired and I had to cut a long run short, or if I had to skip a run, or rearrange things. Like I was really having trouble with that, and kind of had to talk through that with my coach, and kind of that was a learning process in and of itself. But I think during that training cycle, I really learned about listening to my body because of the training volume. Like before that, you can kind of skirt by a little bit, but a marathon brings out a lot of weaknesses, and it will, it kind of encroaches on a lot of things in your life. So I just became a lot more mindful as I was out there for longer and longer runs. And I started keeping a bit more of a detailed training journal. Like before that, I would just make a couple of comments here and there, but I really started to comment on each run, and especially the long runs, how I'm feeling, what is sore, so that I could follow it later on if it didn't go away or things got worse. But yeah, I really, that marathon training really helped me tremendously with learning to run easy and listening to the body, because the marathon is it's a long way to go. And I wasn't going to get there by pushing harder and faster on each workout. The kinder, gentler approach is what got me to the start line and the finish line.
The key, the
Yeah,
ultimate goal, the finish line, not just the
the
start.
finish line. Exactly.
Talk into the not running hard all the time, taking advantage of those easy days. Just because I I talk to so many people, or I see comments on Facebook, on forums, all sorts of things about like running hard all the time, or always working to run a little bit faster, not liking if they're running a little bit slower compared to what 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 5 months ago, whatever it is. And there's such a benefit. Yes, we do want to have some faster days, but there's such a benefit to those easy days as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I could talk about this for a long time. Let me summarize some key points, I think. So number one, for the beginners out there, I think that many people don't want to try running because they think that it has to be hard and it has to hurt all the time. And certainly that's what I remember from running when I was a kid. And from all of those times that I tried to get out the door and say, you know what, I'm going to just run 3 miles today, when I haven't done it in a year, and think that that would feel good to try to go out as hard and as fast as I could, and then come back feeling like everything is hurting and that I don't have any kind of cardiovascular fitness at all. And so I think for the beginners out there, just learning to run easy at the beginning. And by easy, I mean, that might mean run walk intervals where you jog for a short period of time and then you walk for a short period of time and catch your breath. I talk a lot about conversation pace. So if you and I were running together, or you were running with a friend, you could carry on a conversation. So that's hard because people run, their easy pace is different. But if you can carry on a conversation, then you're probably doing a good job in terms of keeping things on the easier side of the scale. So I think learning that conversation pace and learning to slow down is really a gateway for beginners to get out there and enjoy it, because once you enjoy it, then you want to keep going. And then people say, well, I would like to get faster. Or I want to run, longer. And so what we do there, it's called polarizing the training. So in other words, if you go out and you run the same pace on all of your workouts, then when you run the race, you're probably going to just run that same pace. You're training your body just to learn that one pace, and training at the same hard pace really increases our risk of injury. So what we do is look at the week, and we have the majority of the week will be easy and conversation paced. And then we put we'll call it a stimulus, right? A speed workout or a long run, something to switch it up and to train your body, your muscles and your heart, to be able to run a little bit faster. And then those easy runs give us time to recover. So after a hard workout, we give our body a couple of days to recover by running easy, so that when we do the next speed workout or the next long run, we're able to actually complete the workout, and not put ourselves at risk of injury.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the risk of injury thing is huge, that I think a lot of people don't realize, and that when you do run those same paces, even if it's a slow pace, you run that same pace day after day, you aren't giving your body or your muscles any different way of working. And that by speeding it up some days, slowing it down some days, you change. Yes, you're doing the same motion, but you're changing how those muscles are firing.
Yeah, yeah. And even within an easy run, sometimes we'll put in, they're called strides, or you can run easy, and then maybe for the last mile or so, you put in these quicker pickups, which is kind of fun. So it breaks up the easy run, but it also just reminds your leg muscles and its different muscles firing to be able to speed up and increase your footfalls on the pavement, which is helpful. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to run easy all the time. That just sounds boring. But there's ways to there's ways to make it not boring, and kind of spice things up. But once people start running a little bit easier, I find most people just enjoy it more and want to keep up with the sport more. And it's just it's a really nice thing. I feel I feel bad when people say like, well, I just, it's too hard. I just see people and they look like they're dying out there. I don't want to feel like that. And I say, it doesn't have to be like that. Like you're in control of the level of effort. And so just kind of teaching people to listen to their body and kind of really tap into what's going on and how they feel. And even writing it down, like I keep a little training journal and I have my athletes do that, but that can be really helpful to do just for a week or two to get a sense of like how it feels to you. Most people don't think about that. They go out there and they want to kind of tune everything out, maybe listen to music and forget what they're doing. But I am arguing that it's better to tune in.
Yes. Yes. It's really funny because as you said, as far as like people see people or runners out there like looking like they're dying. I have, no matter how hard I'm running, I can be doing the easiest run. And I've seen pictures before. I'm like, I have death face on me. Like, no matter how hard I'm training. So some people are just like that, just FYI.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I've seen some when I always get the race photos back, like sometimes I can tell I'm really like in the zone and other times you're like, oh, that is not a very flattering photo, but I was having a good time.
Right, exactly. I just may not look like it, but I promise.
Yeah.
Funny. Some other thing is good to talk about, and it came to mind as you were talking about the run walk is, we're all going to have those days, whether it's because we had a hard day the day before, or maybe we had a race recently, or just stress at work. We're all going to have those days that we plan to do a certain distance or a certain pace, and you just don't have it. I mean, I know me personally, I've had those runs where it's like I'm 2 miles in, and it's like, and we're walking now, just because my legs don't want to do anything else right now.
Yeah.
So I think like you kind of started prefacing just a little bit ago, as far as tuning into your body, we are all going to have those days that you think it's going to be an awesome run and something happens, it's just not. And we just really need to tune into that and be okay with maybe it's a run walk day rather than just an easy run.
Yeah. Yeah. Some days, yeah, even you sometimes before you get out there, but sometimes you don't. And especially every summer, I'm humbled by the heat and I think this is going to be fine. And then, it's just so hot and feels like a slog sometimes. So I think important things are number one, just every run it will not be, sunshine and roses. Most of them may be, but but not all of them. And everybody also has an off day. And so many things go into this. Like you were saying, stress, nutrition, how much sleep you got, if you're recovering from an injury, like so many things go into how you feel before you get outside on the trail. So I think it's important to just take note of that. Again, if you keep a little journal and just say, today was supposed to be whatever it is, 3 miles, easy, but it felt hard. I had to run walk the last mile because of the heat. I forgot my water. I'm guilty of that, where I thought, oh no, now I'm 2 miles from home and I have no water. So we do things, but we write them down so that we try not to repeat those things. And then also take note, celebrate the good runs. That's another little piece of advice. So we're always writing down about the ones that didn't go as planned, but celebrate the wins. And when you have maybe a speed work day that goes really well and you hit all those intervals, like celebrate that. And I don't know, I try to look at the wins and take those with me. And with the hard runs, the good news is that, you might have that on race day. So it's good to have that experience beforehand so you can kind of work on your mental game going into the race. When things get hard in the race, you can look back at your training and think of some of those hard days or days when you didn't really feel like you had it. But perfectly okay to cut a run short, to do some walking, to do some run walking, depending on how you feel. It's always better. I err on the side of rest and recovery if something is hurting. Just the worst thing is running on a potential injury and then having to be out longer. So taking a couple of days off will really not make or break an entire training cycle, but taking a few months off, well, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
I've learned that the hard way too.
Right, exactly. And I think it's a huge thing to point out that, I think most runners don't want to hear that, a runner wants to run, they want to follow the training plan, totally get it. But there is that secondary part of like, okay, run through it now, but you're going to potentially be off for 3 months, 6 months, a year later when this gets
Mhm.
10 times worse than it is now.
Yeah, yeah. And what we do, I mean, what I do with my one-on-one clients, someone may have signed up for, let's just say, a half marathon, but depending on what happens, I had one lady who had she had to have her appendix out. Like she had she had appendicitis at a later age in life. And these things happen. And so she downgraded. The race was, a couple of weeks later. She downgraded to the 10K, and we put a half marathon on the calendar later. So, things come up. And another lady, same thing, like she was having trouble with her knee and got into physical therapy, but we made the decision together, like, hey, maybe the half marathon isn't a great plan right now. It'll be there, and you can defer many races, you can downgrade to a different race, but it sometimes it feels in the moment like that was the a goal that I was training for, and I just want to get there. And I've been there, and I totally understand. But on the other hand, those races will be there, and it's better to show up to the start line in as best a shape as you can, rather than show up maybe partially injured, and then hurt yourself worse during the race, depending on the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. You brushed on nutrition a little bit, and I think it'd be important to dive into. So many runners, well, so many humans in general, but especially runners, athletes, don't truly realize how much food we actually need, how many calories we need to really fuel both our day-to-day activities and our running. And I think there's a lot of people that are underfueled with their running.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that as well. um, I think one thing that tends to scare people, I think, or especially my newer runners, or people who haven't run in a while, as the training load picks up, they feel hungry all the time, and they get very worried about that. They usually send me a message like, I'm eating so much and I still feel hungry. Is this normal? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
And I mean, I felt with the first marathon, I felt hungry so much. And I think at the time I probably was not fueling myself appropriately either, or at least with the right things. Like I was eating a lot of volume, but I think I needed some more protein and some more fat in there to keep up with that. But I felt hungry all the time. And so that has been a learning experience as well. But in the same way I have people listen to their body while they're running, we also need to listen to it when we're in the kitchen. And so, I running, we talk about the effort scale, and on a level of effort of 1 to 10, like pain scale, 1 is your walking pace, 2, 3, 4 even might be your easy conversation pace, 10 is the bear is chasing you and you fall over at the end. But the same thing, we can use a hunger scale in the kitchen and kind of think about, fueling ourselves at least at appropriate intervals so that we don't let ourselves get like overly hungry and then potentially like eat too much of the wrong things. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, I'll have my meal, and then they're still hungry. And so then they reach for things that they want that, maybe are salty. Like that's one big one. Like we lose a lot of sweat when we run. And so, sodium is an important one, but I'm not saying to go and eat a bag of chips, so, but yes, kind of tuning into how you feel and your hunger cues, and not being afraid to give yourself more volume than you're used to. Like it really, we need it. And I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian, but I would recommend maybe working with one, especially if you're going to train for a marathon. Fueling for the shorter distance races is a little bit easier to navigate, and appetites and things like that. But for the marathon, fueling is super duper important. And if you don't fuel yourself correctly, again, that can lead to injuries too. And I don't think people recognize that.
And that's a huge one right there. What you just said is the injuries or the recovery from injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I was still working with her, but have a client who wasn't healing properly. And we had talked food in the past, but and from what she was telling me, I was thinking everything was fine, but then we talked about it further once she still wasn't fully healing. And I found out how little she was actually eating because her running had decreased. So she backed her food down a lot, which I
Mhm.
think is another common problem when we're injured. But yeah, we need that food to repair ourselves when we are injured, but we also need it to repair the body in between each run that we do too.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, I mean, many of my runners have told me this, and people say this all the time. I mean, the big fear is, well, I'm going to gain weight,
Hmm.
like, and I actually had a lady reach out to me for coaching because she thought she wanted to sign up for a marathon, but her reason was for weight loss. And so we talked through that because I said, well, I certainly can't guarantee weight loss. In fact, we might have weight gain. I know I gained weight, during the marathon training cycles that I've done. And so, yeah, like running is great exercise, but I hesitate to, say that yes, you'll lose weight. We have to be fueling ourselves
Hmm.
appropriately too. So there's just healthy ways to go about it. And I would encourage you, yeah, eat the healthy things, right? I'm not saying carte blanche, go out and eat like cheeseburgers and fries every day, but eating the good foods and fruits and veggies and fueling yourself to your level of hunger is really important.
Hmm. And you mentioned the protein and fat side of things. With we hear so much about we need carbs, we need carbs, we need carbs, and somehow the fats and proteins just get like pushed to the side as if they're non-existent. But they're
Yeah,
still highly important to how the body functions and recovers.
very. Yeah, yeah, and I think they'll help keep you full, which is also good. But yeah, everybody talks about carbs because those are what you need in the short term, I think. And when
Hmm.
we think about running and how long we're going to be out there, if you're running for longer than 90 minutes, you should bring a carb source with you. So we have enough carbohydrate in the form of our glycogen in our muscles, but it only lasts, I mean, it's different for everybody, but about 90 minutes. So if you're going to be out there longer, that's why in longer races, you see people taking in these gels, Gatorade, all different things, but sources of carbohydrate, which you need in the moment. But in terms of eating between meals, yes, don't forget about the protein and the fat. Maybe those can potentially, for some runners, those kinds of things upset your stomach while you're running. But yes, but in between for your other meals, you want to make sure you're really maximizing those as well. So you have a well-balanced a well-balanced diet. And yes, carbs are great, but don't forget the fat and the protein.
Always important.
Yes.
Anything we haven't talked about when it comes to, listening to your body, training plans, beginning running, that you feel is really important to discuss today?
Great question. I think maybe just a word about motivation. A lot of my newer runners and beginners struggle with motivation. And I want to encourage everybody that I also struggle with that still sometimes. So even, experienced athletes and people who run all the time, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I just really don't feel like getting out of bed and going for a run at 6:30 in the morning. And so I just want to kind of normalize that struggle and let you know that it does get better. And I think the key is probably consistency, like becoming consistent with whatever sport it is, but especially with running, just getting out of bed and putting my running clothes on, like getting out the door seems to be the step for me. Like once I can do that, I'm good. And one other tip I tell people is, if you're really not feeling it, just give yourself, let's say you're supposed to, on your training plan, you're supposed to do 30 minutes of an easy run and you're really not feeling it. Put on your clothes, put on your sneakers, go out there and say, you know what, I'll give it 10 minutes or a mile or whatever it is. And then if I'm not feeling it, I'll come back. And most people, I would say like 95% of the time, you can end up doing whatever that workout is that's on the plan. So it's just getting out the door some days that's the hardest part. And I just want to kind of normalize that. I feel that too.
No, I think it's good that you mentioned that because it is so true. And, regardless of how much we run, how long we've been a runner. We all have those days of I don't really feel like going, but I'm going to. And I've had those days where it's like, I'm just going to go for a run. And if I end up walking, I end up walking. And
Mhm.
sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And when you go with that mindset of just, I'm going to go out for and just see how it feels, like you, you never feel like you failed or had a setback because you
Mhm.
literally just went out there to go move your body.
Yeah, exactly. To go, it's a win because you moved your body today, and tomorrow's another day. But most people feel better after they've had some movement, even if it's not what you originally planned for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Michelle, this has been a great conversation. If someone has more questions for you or wants to follow you, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It was great. My website is probably the best place. It's mindful-marathon.com. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Probably Instagram is the better place. It's at mindful.marathon.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks so much.